I want to just expand on something that Myra said on the little cards that you've gotten. We are at the end of the day to close out our time together. We're going to have just a short ritual. So it will be at that point that we'll ask you if you wish to place your card on the crystal that you feel most connected to. And if you wish, you're invited to share a word about what's on your card or what's in your heart. You don't have to reveal your most private intention to the group, though you are invited to do so. But just hold on to your cards. There'll be a time to write them at the end of the day if you haven't already, and then we'll just close out with that. So just wanted to bring that into a little bit of clarity. And now it is my complete honor, pleasure to introduce Pastor Corey, who has become a dear friend, a good friend, an incredible friend of Reimagine, a member of our board, hailing from Detroit, as I said earlier. And as I said, everybody's full bios are in your packet, but it's really awesome, Corey, just to actually be sitting next to you and not on a Zoom screen. And
I know, right?
It's so good. It's so good. I feel like I want to just go like, yes, I can touch you. It's so good. And I want to start. We're hoping this is going to be more of a conversation than a presentation, but I do have a couple questions that I want to just actually really ask you. Mm-hmm. You know, for those of us. Well, let me ask a question. How many folks have actually been in a room when someone has died?
Wow.
So
Okay.
a lot of the room.
Yeah.
I want to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
who have done that, I mean, I don't know, 15 years at the bedside, hundreds, maybe thousands of times you have been with families, with people with families, people without families. I want to ask you about your experience. What is that like for you at the bedside?
First of all, good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's good to see you, definitely, and it is a pleasure to be here. You know, being at the bedside for the number of years that I was absolutely incredible. And I say that for all of you who have experienced just being in the space with someone who was dying. It is a very strong spiritual experience. Whatever your faith system or your belief system is, when you get to that point, there's no doubt that there's something spiritually happening with this transition, with this death, as we know that individual. Because I do not believe that person ceases to live, but they cease to live in the way in which we've known them. And that's important for us. And many of us struggle with the grief of that. But I've witnessed people literally just talking to me and then totally just slipped away, totally made their transition. I was the last person to talk to many people. And I saw that as a gift. When I was alone in the room with someone who was dying, and I was the last person on earth that they had a conversation with, I was the last person in this forum that was able to communicate and connect with them, to hug them, to kiss them. That's powerful, because it's at that moment that you realize how precious life is. I've also witnessed people struggle to the point where they were so unsatisfied with their lives that they didn't want to die. They didn't want to leave here. There were some people who were very comfortable with that, with death, because they had lived a life that was fulfilling. But I think that those individuals are in the minority. We experience so many people who have lived an unfulfilled life that when death approaches and it comes, they have so many regrets. And it was Robin Sharma who said, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Robin Sharma. He's a prolific motivational speaker, writer, hailing from Canada. So But he said, when we come into this world, we cry and the world rejoices. And we should live our lives in such a way that when we leave this world, we rejoice and the world cries. And I thought that that was just such a great way of looking at life in and of itself. But it's tough. It's tough watching a person leave this existence in that way. And I've witnessed family members fight, over what should be done. And I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that. But when you don't prepare for death in the way that I think people should, then you fail to give that gift to those who you are leaving behind, quote unquote. So it is an interesting experience. And if I can just ask the question, for those of you who have experienced that, a person dying right there and you were there, how did it feel? How did it feel for you? What were your thoughts and what were the perceived thoughts of that person who was dying? So if anybody wants to share that experience, I would love for us to hear from you. Yes. We got a microphone here. Okay, all right. Excellent.
In the case of my mother, which this was like 2 years ago, it was actually this sense of sort of release, actually, in many ways, because it would have been a long, slow process, and I don't think she would have. I think it was just sort of this sense of release, like a lifting. So, and then I was also there with her mother. And it was sort of the same thing. I mean, you came away with, I remember we went out to dinner after, and it was this, it was this very special sort of privileged moment, and you felt like you saw someone move on. So actually, it was actually a beautiful moment.
Yes. Wow. For some, it may not have been beautiful. But so, anyone else want to share? Right over here, Brad. Thanks.
It was also, I was there for both my parents physically, and it was both a privilege, that's the word that came to my mind. It was also a relief. And I wish I'd been more prepared for what the physical experience was going to be like, and I'm now following this amazing hospice nurse on Instagram who's like showing it all out there. I mean, it's really quite something. And it really took, I'm absolutely not frightened of it anymore. And I think everyone deserves to have someone be there.
You bring up a very good point of not being prepared to see the things that you may see. I think this mic is going in and out, but I know we have a hospice doctor here as well, and I just want to ask Doc, do you prepare people for what they're going to see as the transition is taking place? Because I think it does bring fear and a level of distraught to people who are seeing that up close and personal.
Yeah, I think that's my greatest satisfaction in helping families to begin to understand where in life's journey their loved one is and what they can expect and what they can see. And unfortunately or fortunately, I've been present for hundreds, maybe even close to 1,000 deaths. And when the death is peaceful, I feel great relief, and I see the relaxation that comes over the family members when they realize their loved one's suffering is over, but they understand that they'll always be with them in another form, in a transitional phase. In losing my younger sister and losing my wife, they unfortunately did not have peaceful deaths. The institutions where they were admitted did not control their symptoms. And my relief was that their very obvious agony and struggle and suffering was over, but I was overwhelmed with anger because they did not have the dignity that everyone deserves at the end of life. The other wonderful thing that I've seen, and I'll just recount two very, very quickly. there was a lady who's breathing 3 to 4 times a minute for 4 to 5 days. And I kept saying to her daughter, there's something unfinished. There's something that isn't resolved. I mean, this is almost not compatible with life.
Right.
And they kept saying, no, there are no other family members. Everybody's been, you know, the usual. And one morning, she and her husband came in to visit the mom. And she said, Mom's still here? And I said, yes. And I said, I sound like a broken record, but there is something unresolved. And her husband said to his wife, can I tell Charlie what we talked about last night? And she agreed. Her mother had evidently been very abusive to her.
Wow.
She had never hugged her, never kissed her, never gave her credit for any accomplishment or any value. When she met this man and he proposed, she actually rejected it because she felt she didn't deserve to be loved. If her mother couldn't love her, how could this man want her or love her? So we talked for a while, and I asked her if she'd be willing to go to her mother's bedside and acknowledge what she just told me, and could she find it in her heart to forgive her mother. And we all went in the room, and she just said, you were a terrible mother. You've ruined me. And I don't understand why you would have treated me that way, but something awful must have happened in your life that you had this issue with connecting to me. And I forgive you, and I love you. And her mother opened her eyes, smiled, and stopped breathing.
Wow.
It was an extraordinary, extraordinary experience. And another quick story, there was a gentleman who was dying, and his wife and his son would visit. The wife and the son, the mother and son, had been estranged for 30 years. And when one walked in the room, the other one would leave. And I was sitting outside, and the son was drinking some wine, and we were talking. And when I walked in, the mother was sitting in the lobby, and she said, you give him more time than you give me. I said, I'm here for you. So she said, do you like music? And I said, yes. Would you come in the library and let me play the piano for you? And I said, yes. And she was very talented. It was a woman of significant age, but very talented. And she even sang. And about 20 minutes later, her son walked into the library and stood at the door. This is a tough one. She looked up and she said, now I'm going to sing my son's favorite song. And she started to sing Over the Rainbow.
Yes.
And he snapped and said, it's not my favorite song anymore. And she said, I don't care, I'm going to sing it anyway. And he moved into the room and sat next to me. And then he moved and sat on the piano bench next to his mother. And they sang together.
Wow.
We went up to the husband's room after that, and the two of them walked in together. He looked at them, smiled, and stopped breathing. His job was done.
Yes.
But it's that kind of healing that I feel is so gratifying and so satisfying. I'm sorry to take so much time.
No, listen, please do not apologize. We needed to hear that, and I believe it was divinely appointed for us to hear that. It just coincides with what this conversation is supposed to be about, and that is, confronting death and the gifts that death brings us, even when we don't want to accept it. And so the healing aspect is so important. I've witnessed that so many times. There was a woman she was dying, and we were doing her a disservice. The doctors told her that she couldn't have anything to eat or drink, right? She knew she was dying, and all she wanted was a Sprite. A Sprite, that's all she wanted was a Sprite. It was her favorite drink, and I went up to the doctor and I said, well, you know, she mentioned to me that she wants a Sprite. Well, she can't have anything. I said, Doc, she's dying. Is it gonna hurt her to have a Sprite? And so I went and I got her a Sprite, and I poured it into a cup. She took a couple of sips. She smiled at me. She laid back, and about 20 minutes later, she was gone. But she had her Sprite, you know. And she didn't have family. She didn't have anybody to be with her. So I was that one person who was with her during her last moments. But she wanted that Sprite, and that was important to grant her that.
You know, it makes me think, that story about this whole question of final exits and what it means to have some kind of authority, some kind of voice over our lives, and the dignity with which we want to honor ourselves and the people that we love. So I know that this is something we're gonna get to more. But I wanted to ask you, you know, given these stories and what many people, I think, really have witnessed as you said, Corey, as a gift, blessing that can come into our lives, into our current lives. This mother and son now had each other in a way that they hadn't for 30 years. Why do you think, why is it still so hard to talk about this? What are the barriers? What makes this still a taboo topic?
As human beings, we are afraid of our own demise. We don't like to think of ourselves as, for some of us getting older, even me right now, as I think about it, even as I work out, everything, but you cannot stop time from moving forward, right? I mean, I pulled a muscle getting out of bed, so that was, so it's like you got to think about that, like, wow, I'm getting older now. But I think this topic is so tough because we don't want to talk about or think about us not being here anymore, not doing the things that we're doing, not being with those family members, and it's a struggle. Death, especially I would say in Western society, is so taboo. In other cultures, death is honored. Really, people are celebrated. For those of you who may be of any spiritual persuasion, when you read any type of spiritual books, death is embraced. It is celebrated. But we want to think of ourselves as being invincible, right? I'm gonna live forever. And in light of that, when we think we're gonna live forever, we put off those things that we should do. And I know I'm transitioning another topic, but we put off those things that we should do and that we can do. And as I was sharing with, I believe it was Sabrina, I was sharing with Sabrina that we can't live fully if we don't look at ourselves in that way, that potentially we can die. And so many people miss living their greatest lives because they're afraid to face death. When you face and embrace your demise or your death, you begin to do those things that you believe will make a difference. Some people will put off traveling, but if they get a poor prognosis or a diagnosis, then they'll say, well, I'm going to take that trip that I never thought of taking it. Well, why not take it now? Why not take it when things are well? Why not live your life to the fullest? Because there's no guarantee that any of us are going to make it out of this room today. I mean, that's the reality. I know we like to think that we're going to end up where we're going, but there's no guarantee that we're going to make it there. So why not make this moment the best moment that we can make, so that, our legacy will be that we lived our lives to the fullest and that we experienced those things that we wanted to experience. And we don't have to wait until we see death in order to do that. So it's just that topic. I know, for many people, they feel like if I talk about death, it's going to come faster. It's like, okay, some of you may have said when I just said that, am I going to die before the end of the day? I don't know. I don't know. However, we have this moment. So let's enjoy and live every moment to the fullest. And I think we miss out on giving ourselves a gift of life in and of itself when we refuse to talk about this topic. It's just not common. It's just not something that we talk about at the dinner table, with our family members.
Except at my dinner table.
Yep.
And I know at Lois's dinner table and other dinner tables. There are families, when I want to actually just pick up on this for a second.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed about a year ago. And I've been doing this work for many, many years. And I will say, it was a blow. I'm not going to pretend that it was an easy diagnosis. It's been a really shitty year. But my kids, who are in their 20s, have a little bit of a muscle because they've been hearing about these conversations. And I have a little bit of a muscle because I've been having and supporting these conversations for 2 decades now. And I will say that without that muscle, I would be in a very different place. So to your point, Corey, there is something, I think it's natural, animal, human, even though we are the only species that knows that we're going to die, in a way, we are so engaged in our lives that we really don't want to go there. I will say that I was thinking this morning as I was walking that this is, in a way, the happiest moment of my life. I'm miserable, I'm terrified, but I've also never been happier.
Wow.
And that is the gift of this experience for me. And I know Brad asked this in the very beginning of our day together, why do we have to wait until something happens? 9/11, a diagnosis, whatever, a loss. And I guess our invitation today, and what I'm interested to ask you about, Corey, is what are, short of a diagnosis, short of an international catastrophe, there are things around us every day that could really help us reckon with the fact that nothing stays the same. Every day. And depending on what your community is, as I said earlier, you're not waiting till you turn 70 or 80 or 90. There's death out your window, in your car, in your school, every day. And yet, we don't really think about that so much. So you said there are things we can do. There's certainly bucket list things that we might do. But what are some of the things that you've seen people do that have obviously not saved their lives, but maybe enriched their souls so that they are in a place to move through this? I don't even want to say accept, because I'm not sure everybody accepts. Most people don't. But what helps?
Being in settings like this is one thing. This is definitely a help. Your interest level in wanting to know more about, how do you handle death, and should we look at death, and how do we prepare for end of life. But I also think that, let me go back to barriers real quick, and then I'll answer that. For me, there were many spiritual barriers that kept me from talking about this subject. And that is because we are always inundated with hope. with resilience, right? I mean, that's the American way, right? Is to be resilient. I mean, right here in, the city of New York, the resilience came out of 9/11, and we're going to defeat this, and we're going to overcome it, and we're going to stand strong. When truth of the matter is that every day death is occurring, and we're vulnerable. And unless we really sit down and be honest with ourselves that this is something that we need to talk about, resilience means nothing if we don't understand the fact that one day is going to be our day. And that to me is we have to see death as that gift, right? What you're doing with your family now is a gift. And so what we need to do is put ourselves in a space of saying, how can I live my best life? And I can only live my best life if I understand that this life is short, that this life that I have a short time, that little dash, right, in between our birth date and our death date, that dash is it. How do I make my mark? How will people remember me? How do I want to be remembered? What will be my legacy? And so I talk a lot about legacy to people. I talk a lot about, instead of saying, death, I'll say, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered? And I have people, and here's an exercise that you can do. Write your own obituary. Write your own obituary. Why do I say that? And I tell young people this. I talk with teenagers, and I tell them, write your own obituary. And everything that you want to do and everything you want to be remembered by, and then use that as your guide for living. Because that's really what it's about, right? You need a guide, you need a compass. What do you want that compass to be? So when you write out, I want to be this, or I want to do this, those are the things that can help you to understand how to live better. And for me, death is life. It's talking about life. It's understanding life in a greater sense. And also, being around Reimagine can help. Reimagine is a tool, an organization that can help people to grasp what death is about and how to live through it, and how to live with grief when you have a loved one who has gone on. So I try to put myself in a space constantly of being grateful for every moment, and that gratefulness for every moment puts me in a space of saying, if I had to leave this earth today or next week or next year or 20 years from now or 100 years from now, whatever the case may be, I know that I've taken the time to maximize every moment. So you cannot truly live until you understand how you want to leave this earth or die. And to me, that's my mantra. That's the way that I approach this each and every day. And then putting people around you who are willing to talk about this subject as well. When you have people who don't want to talk about it, and here's a great story. There was a mother who was dying. She wanted to put together an advanced care plan or advanced directives, and her daughter, her only daughter, refused to talk about it. And so she came to me, she said, look, as her spiritual leader, she said, look, this is what I need to do. I need you to have all my passwords, here's my insurance information, put it in a safe deposit box, but my daughter does not want to talk about this, and I'm going to need you to help her through this. So I said, okay. So I went to her daughter and I said, your mom talked to me about these things. She said, I don't want to talk about it. I don't, because my mother, she's not going to die. She's not going to die. I don't believe she's going to die. So eventually her mother did die. I helped her through the process. After her funeral service, the daughter and I sat down, we had dinner, we talked, and she said, I want to thank you for doing something that I did not have the courage to do, and I missed out on sharing a moment with my mother that I wish I had. But I want to thank you for helping her through that process. I know I can't get that time back, and I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. but I'm thankful that she had you. And those are the little things that matter. Can we step in and be there for someone who wants to talk about this? And can we help them to maximize that gift and then help their loved ones through it if they refuse to talk about it?
So I want to expand this a little, and I'm curious and really welcome comments and thoughts about this as well. You spoke about how in some traditions there is, such a strong drive toward hope that the idea of acknowledging that death can happen feels almost sacrilegious. I think we live in a medical system that does the same thing. We have, and especially in our great cities, we know how many fantastic medical centers are there here in New York. And we kind of have still, I believe, a sense of omnipotence for our doctors. He's the guy, he's the heart guy, like he's the one, he's going to save us. And there's only so much doctors can do. And then we have the blessing of hospice and palliative care physicians who recognize that there is a time to stop. We have a close colleague, a physician on the West Coast named Dr. Jessica Zitter, who's written a lot about what she calls the medical conveyor belt, the end-of-life conveyor belt, where one intervention leads to the next intervention, to the next intervention, and you're just on this conveyor belt, hardly, without a choice. So I'm curious, Corey, how do we engage with that? How do we resist, that? And look, I'm not saying I don't want everything, to help me preserve my life.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, is that the choice? How do we come to tease out what's for ourselves and what is part of a larger system? And maybe we can also invite some shares on that.
Okay, so I'll go back to a spiritual aspect of this. People talk about miracles, right? And they believe that some physicians can help them to achieve that miracle. They believe their faith can help them to achieve that miracle. But miracles are temporary, and that's something that we must understand. People talk about it. Many people, whatever faith tradition you're from, people know the story of Lazarus and Lazarus being raised from the dead, right? But this is what I always tell people. Lazarus died again. He did die. He's not alive today walking around New York City, right? He's dead. And so when we don't embrace the fact that death is imminent, I don't care what miracles occur, it's going to happen. I don't care what doctors can do to preserve a life. It may be temporary. It may buy some more time, but we still have to wrestle, with this death piece. I know that people have a struggle, and our medical system can do an injustice to people. I literally saw doctors, and here's the honest truth. Sometimes it comes down to money. And many times it comes down to money. Most of the time it comes down to money. I witnessed doctors, a doctor who I called out on the carpet, but he was giving this false hope to this family of a dying patient and wanted to squeeze in one more chemo treatment. And that was not going to help that person at all. It was unethical. It was not right. And I called him out on the carpet and I said, why are you doing this? Is it to get a few extra bucks from this family for this procedure or process, instead of putting them in a state where they can, receive hospice care, which is another subject that we need to talk about, the hospice piece. But this individual was saying, well, you're right. And he didn't do that treatment. That person was able to pass away peacefully in hospice care eventually. But we do a disservice to so many people by bargaining with them and letting them know that, hey, well, you know, I can do this and it'll give you some more time. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth going through that? Is it worth the extra pain and struggle? Or is it okay to just let go? And sometimes we need to allow people to just to let go and honor that and respect that. And when we don't, we're doing humanity a disservice. We're doing a disservice to that human being. And I don't know about you, but I love people. I love being around people. I love, you know, honoring the dignity and respect of people. And when I see that not happening in the medical field, it not only raises an eyebrow, but I raise my voice. And I think many of us have to begin to raise our voices and say it's okay, you know, to do that. I don't know if I answered your question because I just talk sometimes, but
You did, and I'm wondering if other people have thoughts or questions about, yeah.
One second, yeah, okay, yeah.
Thank you. I love this dialogue, and for me, it's something that really.
I love your socks, by the way.
I love your shoes.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. When do you know when to stop? How do you know? And how do you know also in the ecosystem of a family and caregivers where we're not getting along? Or one just can't accept that mom's dying, the other one is like, she's gone, let's help. In other words, that to me is where, and in my own, when my wife died, it was the same thing. We did not stop until 3 days before she died. And
Yeah.
I wish we had, but, so how do you know?
You know, let me go back to what our doctor said. It's some of the unresolved issues that people have that motivate them to continue to do everything that they would want to do, but maybe not what that person who's dying would want to have happen. I really think that for every person is different. There's not this is the definite time to stop, but there's a feeling that I think people get whenever people are facing the fact of, and as you know this, you know, when you talk about hospice, people are like, no, you know, I refuse that. They don't see the benefits of hospice. They just say, no, I don't want that because that automatically translates to death, you know, for them instantly. And what I tell people, especially those in hospice care who are providing that service or doctors or nurses, I said, give them time. Let them look at some maybe unresolved issues. Let's talk with those family members and just say, you know, is there a reason why, you know, you are in a position of not really accepting what's happening right now before you? And for some people, it gives them an opportunity to reflect, and they'll say, well, I just need a couple of days, and let me try to resolve this issue, or let me, as my good friend Ira Byock says, you know, those four things, you know, I love you, I forgive you,
Please forgive me.
please forgive me, and
thank you.
Thank you, yes, and thank you for that, because Ira would just be mad at me if I didn't say those in the right way, and so. I believe that you need to give people that opportunity to work through that, but there's something that happens in the course of that says it's time and it's okay. And that time may come 3 days before, or that time may come 3 or 6 months before. But it's different for everyone. And I think we need to allow ourselves to be okay with the fact that that is different for everyone. So I don't have, and none of us have that magic formula that says, okay, this is your numerator, this is your denominator. Now, you know, you divide, and then this equation now is the exact equation that you need to get through this. No, it's just a matter of listening, watching, and understanding, and then ultimately getting to that place of releasing. And once again, it may be in those last moments that release happened. As you said, Doc, it may be those 3 days, but I don't want you to feel guilty, you know, for that either. Because it's important for us to know and to understand that when we're facing those decision-making times. As a family member, we're selfish, right? We're selfish. We don't want that person to leave. And sometimes we'll tell that dying person, no, I don't want you to go. True story. Friend of mine who was dying in the hospital, she was probably about 2 days out from dying at that time. We didn't know, but she was at a place of peace. She felt so peaceful. Her daughters came in and they said, Mom, we're going to pray. We're going to pray and God is going to heal you. Her pastor came in and he said to her, and we affectionately called her Mother Morris, he said, Mother Morris, you can get through this. And she said to him, you don't know what I've seen. You don't know this peace that has come over me. I'm okay with this. And it was everybody around her who wasn't okay. And they failed to recognize what she wanted and what she desired. And so they missed out on an opportunity to share in that dying experience with her. And so she actually died alone. Well, I was there. I was in, but I missed her. She's in the middle of the night. She passed away. But her daughters were not there because they were mad at her because she refused to have more treatment done. And they missed out on the opportunity. And her spiritual leader was in a position where he did not understand. And he did her a disservice too as well. And so she died as a woman who didn't have those people around her who she wanted to have around her because they didn't understand where she was. And she shared with me, I'm okay. Trust me. I'm at peace. And she was seeing things and she was talking to people who had passed on before her. You know how that happens. You know, you begin to see those loved ones and you know, people say, well, they're crazy. They don't know. They're not crazy. You know, the spirit world is very real. And they were, you know, reflecting on those individuals and communicating with those individuals. And those are the signs that I pick up on when they start talking about their mother who may have passed on or their loved ones. And I said, well, they're getting close and we need to accept this and it's okay. But we have to get out of the way as well. And we have to not be so selfish and allow them to have the things that they want to have happen and not what we want to have happen. Because it may be more pain and misery for that person to continue to live. But all we want, because of our unresolved issues or because of some things that we didn't do,
Or I would just say because of love. A lot of it is just about love.
And I'm gonna push back a little bit. And I hate to do this with Jeannie. I'm gonna push back a little bit because it's okay. It is love.
Yeah.
It is love. But it's a love that is a selfish love. And here's why I say that. Sometimes we love people because of what they can do for us and not for what we can do for them. And so our love is predicated on, you know, what that person does for us. Not saying in all cases, and I'm not saying that there's no pure love involved in that too as well. But we want that person here for the reasons that we want that person here. That person may want to be released and leave here for reasons that they have for leaving here. And we need to honor that and respect that. And sometimes we as loved ones, we get in the way. And we cause discord. And we cause an uneasiness with that person who just wants to know that their loved ones are going to be okay if they left here. And we don't give them that gift. But yes, it is out of that love that we want them to stay. But we still have to see it as a selfish love.
Well, I mean, I think Gabriel Kahan has this beautiful poem, "My children are not my children, they are the sons and the daughters of life longing for itself." So when we think about that, you know, we don't possess anyone. And so I hear you. Everyone has their own journey and their own spirit of life longing for itself and where that needs to go.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you want to comment on that?
I thought there was was there a hand?
Well, I love your story I love the story about Mother Morris because I've been thinking in this conversation, the possibility, and it ties into this thing of love and selfish love, maybe it's fear.
Yeah.
And Mother Morris knew something that you just said off the top of your head, like as if everybody accepts it, the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And this whole morning I've been thinking, maybe part of the reimagining is that we don't talk about it because we have for hundreds of years neglected the knowing about our spiritual
Wow.
core. And so we're not talking about death because we're not talking about being spiritual beings. And death is a process in that whole understanding. And when you said, you know, because they love, perhaps it's a love that's based in fear because we don't have faith that in fact what this poem brings to light is that we are part of the eternal and that we are here to do and be as much as we can and to be in love, and that the conversation is really about moving towards that part of us that really understands that we're connected to something so much greater than we are. And the crystals bring that in too, like we're part of.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that, like how much, and you said something about Western culture, and I was like, I mean, now it permeates throughout the world, but those cultures that really do incorporate life and death and into their everyday and include all the generations in the celebrations as well as the mourning, have an understanding that there's cycles of life.
You know, and I was gonna, so that was perfect. That was divinely inspired because I was thinking in my mind as you were talking and you just gave me the segue, right? The Lion King. How many of you have seen The Lion King, right? Okay, it's most of us, right? You know, and Mufasa, right? And his death, and him talking to Simba, and Simba seeing a reflection in the water when Rafiki took him to that cave. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? So the circle of life is real, but the circle of life involves death. But when we see death, we see that person who's passed on depositing something in us and leaving us with something and still being with us in another form that can help us to carry on. You know, it's a person that said to me, you know, that reason why we don't see trees on mountains is because nothing grows where nothing dies. So something has to die in order for something to grow. You plant a seed, that seed dies in its present form and then becomes something else and something greater. But it must be planted and buried in order for that to take place. So death inspires growth in various ways. And so we have to ask ourselves, how can I grow from this experience? What have I learned that will propel me to be a better person? And how can I do something in honor of my wife, my husband, my mother, my father, whoever that person may be? How can I grow from this experience and then do something to pay them tribute and honor? I think that's what we sometimes miss. And then ignoring that core, that spiritual essence that of who we are, regardless of faith tradition. You know, I'm not here to try to persuade you to believe what someone else believes, but, you know, at the core, we are spiritual beings. And when we deny that, we deny the reality and truth of being spiritual. And within spirituality is the circle of life. It's understanding death. And that death is not the ultimate end in terms of life in and of itself. It just moves that person to a different form. And when we can appreciate that and love that, then we can get to that point of letting go probably much sooner than we have been.
Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
This is great. Are you loving this conversation? All right, great. I mean, yeah, I wanted to see some yeses anyway. You're probably not going to say no anyway, but go ahead.
For such a soulful, beautiful morning. And two things come to mind. Sometimes your loved one will tell you point blank that they want to go. And this happened to me taking care of my 96-year-old dad. For a while, he loved living. And there came a time where his little head wouldn't lift in the wheelchair. I was like, Dad, you have to take your meds. If you don't, you could die. And he like looked up, looked me dead in the eye, and he said, Dimitra, I want to die. And a friend of mine a week before had said, stop taking your dad to the hospital. I think it's almost mean at this point. And I'm like, but if he has an infection, and when he looked at me and said, I want to die, I called hospice. I said, okay, Dad, we won't do any more hospital. And he declined very rapidly after that. But, and then I just wanted to speak to your point of selfishness. In our culture, we're not living tribally, like the native peoples lived tribally. Here at IX, there's an associate, a friend of Myra, who did this extraordinary film called Kiana's Apache Ceremony. And I burst into tears 3 times watching the support this young woman had to become a woman. So if you're bedside with like the roots of your tree, and that tree is leaving, and there isn't a tribe, there isn't the intimacy, there isn't this woven sense of community and active connection to the ancestors, I think it's normal to clutch. Like, to me, part of the reimagining would be trying to create real ceremonial tribe and having a relationship with the dead ongoing. The native people certainly did.
Yes.
Their graveyards, holy, holy, holy land. I'm going to hand it to my left.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your sharing. We are really beings of light. And thank you for mentioning that we are spiritual beings. And I think our materialistic way of looking at things on the physical plane, only with the physical eyes, has limited our perspective and understanding of death.
Yes.
I am familiar with the Japanese philosophy. It's called Tsukuyomi Hikari. They believe that death is our astral birthday and that we should rejoice when this happens to our family and to us. But I also thank you for mentioning ancestors and the native populations' connection to nature and their ancestors, because this way of looking at things show a lot of gratitude to our ancestors, especially our parents, grandparents, and thousands of other beings before us, before we came into this physical plane. So I'm very grateful for this way of looking at things as a spiritual being. And I want to thank Claudia Abate, who is my colleague at the United Nations, where we worked for a while, because we brought a lot of people with the same kind of thinking. I was telling Myra, I saw her a while ago, that we even brought people who brought crystal skulls and a lot of crystals to the United Nations. And I was thinking to myself, why can't we bring this type of thinking to the world body sometime in the future, to expose this philosophy to peoples of all over the world?
Yes.
There are 192 member states, and to have a few representatives in the audience to explain this philosophy, this way of looking at death and the afterlife would be wonderful. Thank you very much for having us today.
Oh, absolutely awesome. Yeah. So, you know, I want to share a story. Death being a gift. I want to share this story that I've used to really deal with this subject. And there was a young man, and this young man was graduating from high school, and he went to his father one day, and he said, "Dad," he said, "you know, my graduation is coming up," and it was just him and his father who lived together. And his father said yes, and he said, the son said, "Well, I want a gift," you know, and he said, "Okay." He smiled. He said, "Well, what would you like?" And he said, "Well, you know, I went down to the car dealership, and there was this nice, bright, red Corvette." drop top, convertible interior. And he said, I would like to have that. Now, he only asked his dad for this gift because he knew that his dad could afford it. And so a couple weeks went by, graduation day came, and the son went into his father's room, woke him up. He said, "Hey, Dad, today's my graduation day." He said, "Where's my gift?" He looked outside, didn't see anything, right? And so his dad handed him a box, just a plain cardboard box. And he opened the box, and there was this neatly wrapped Bible in this box. He said, "Oh." He looked at the Bible, he looked at his dad, he looked at the Bible, he looked at his dad, he looked at the Bible, he looked at his dad, and he said, "With all your money, all you could get me was this Bible?" And he threw the box down on the floor, stormed out of his father's house, vowing to never speak to his father again. Well, years had passed, and the young man moved away, moved out of town. He got married, had children, and began to live his life, to the fullest. Children that his father had never met, a wife that his father had never met. And one day he got a call from a close friend that said, "You need to come home. Your father is dying." And so he thought about it. He thought about the years earlier and how he had left his father. And so he bought a ticket to go to the airport. He needed to go see his dad. He wanted to make amends. He got to the airport, got a second call. It said, "It's too late. Your father has died." So he gets on the plane, he's crying, he gets to his father's house where the person who had called him was waiting for him. And he said, "I know what happened between you and your dad years earlier, but your dad still loved you, and he left everything to you." And so this son was thinking about his father's love. And so he walked into the house, and everything was still kind of the way it was since he had left his father's home. And he went into his father's bedroom, and he sat on his father's bed, and he just began to cry uncontrollably. And through the tears, he looked in the corner and saw the box. He picked up the box this time. He opened it up again. He unwrapped this Bible, and he saw a place in the Bible that was marked. It was Matthew 7:11 that said, "If you, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give you good gifts?" Then at that moment, a car key dropped from the back of the Bible. That car key had the inscription of his name and the date of his graduation. And so the son, because he didn't like what it was wrapped in, missed the gift that was awaiting him. And I say to us, death is like that. Because we don't like what life gives us many times in the form of death, we miss the gift that we desire, that gift of love, that gift of peace, that gift of honoring a loved one. We miss out on that because we don't like what it's wrapped in. And I say to us, if we begin to embrace the wrapping of death, if we begin to embrace the harshness of those moments and the grief that comes with it, we will then soon discover a gift that we could not otherwise receive. It's only through that doorway of death that we can receive some of the greatest gifts that life has to offer. So I say to us, embrace death, and you will find yourself receiving gifts that you never thought you could have. Gifts from your loved ones, gifts from friends and family members that they leave us, that motivate us to live better. So I just wanted to share that with us.
It's an incredible story, and I identify with that. And I realized when I said earlier that in some ways I'm happier than I've ever been, I realized I didn't really explain that. And I think it's related to your story, because I don't like this package either. But I will say that the gifts of friendship, of love, of support, have kind of cracked my heart open. And I needed that. I mean, I feel lucky to have had that. Ooh. I just want to say, this sun is now lighting this crystal behind Corey, and I feel like something's happening here. Just want to acknowledge that. So I do think that that the whole idea of reimagining what it is that we are doing in our lives and what it is to reimagine end of life is really an invitation to kind of look deeper into that box and I don't want to be Pollyannish about this. I mean, you know, it's not easy to have death knock on your door or to experience a profound loss. And I would just say that, and. We're coming to the end of our time together here.
It's a collective awe.
Exactly. But I want to invite any other questions or comments for Corey. And of course, we'll have more time together during the day, but anything else to raise? Yeah, right here, and then back to Lena.
Okay, I have a friend that she took her life and was suddenly. And I went to a lot of emotions. I went to sadness, angry,
Yes.
Everything, because only the husband and me, we knew what was going on with her.
Yes.
And at this point, that was 8 years ago, the husband remarried again. I'm so happy for him. The new wife is amazing. But I'm still sometimes, look what you lost. The graduation of your son, life, the son, this. So I think I have been so many stages when she left that sometimes I don't know if I already healed about that. That is different than when my mother died. She was 94, so it was time for her to go. She was a happy person. She raised 9 kids. So it's different feelings that you have when somebody dies.
Yeah, you know, and so are you grappling with the fact that maybe you could have done something to avoid that? You know, and that's what I want you to begin to look at letting go of.
No, I worked
Yeah.
on that. I worked on that for 4 years with the husband because we felt guilty. That was
Yes.
our fault. We weren't there.
Right,
So we
right.
healed over that. But I'm still mad. Like sometimes I'm like, I understand depression and everything, but
Yeah, and so some things are just really out of our control. And you know, but it's that love, and this goes back to that love. It's that love that you had for her that causes that feeling to resurface every now and then. And just embrace it when it resurfaces. It's okay. It's okay to feel that way because that's that love resurfacing once again, even if it comes in the form of anger and frustration. It's still a form of love that you have, and it's only there because of that love that you had for her. So continue to embrace it, and we're all rallying around you too as well to support. I know you have a great support system as well, but I'm glad you were able to express that because talking about it, it really helps, you know, even with people who don't know you.
I just want to add that different deaths affect us different ways. And suicide is a tough one.
Yes.
And it raises lots of different questions and feelings. And, you know, I'm a firm believer that we are on a spiral with our feelings. We wrestle, we grapple, and then something in life happens, and it sort of resurfaces, and there it is again.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't stay necessarily for 8 years, but something will come up, and if it does stay, then it's, you know, it's in us. It's something that we're working with. It's something for us to work with, and I just really believe that compassion for yourself is the most important for ourselves when we are feeling things that we don't really want to feel.
And it's still a way of connecting with her. It's still a
Right.
way of connecting. Yeah.
Thank you. Lena and Suzanne.
I just actually have a quick question,
Yes.
and it goes back originally to Jeannie's talking about how her family could not talk about death. And I said at the beginning that I had an extraordinary experience with being with both my parents. My mother would not, didn't know, would not accept that she was dying, let's put it that way. And it was for months. And we never talked, I tried, my question is, I don't want to talk about me, what do we do in situations where the person who's actually dying, just 2 days before she died, I said, Mommy, how do you feel about this? And she's like, well, I don't like being this skinny. Maybe I'll eat something more. I mean, that's how much she was avoiding. So, so, is it important for the other person for the person who's dying to really know that they are? I made it unimportant because I had to take her through the journey.
She knew she was dying. She knew it. She understood that, even though she was trying to avoid it. That's why she was avoiding it. She knew it and understood it. But there's absolutely, I think that we need to honor people even in that. We honor and respect them with that, because whether they want to recognize it or not, it's still a sacred moment that's occurring. And we just want to be there for them, even in their avoidance of the subject, to sit with them and to be with them and to prepare yourself, I think are important things. But they need that, and they've earned that autonomy, so to speak, to deal with death in the way that they want to deal with death. And so I think we need to respect that and honor that, and it's okay. It's okay. That would be my answer. I don't know.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
One more, I believe. One more, and then
last comment, and
we'll
then we'll close it out.
Yep.
There are a lot of things in life that we don't understand. Each one of us have our own circle of life to deal with. And I want to share with you my experience because I also had liver cancer, stage 4, no symptoms. And I went through the chemo treatment and I lost my hair and everything. So I can empathize with that. But each of us have our own destiny, and we have to embrace it and give gratitude every day to God just for giving us life. Give gratitude to God, and also apology for a lot of things that we do not understand. But everything that happens in life is for our spiritual good, not our physical good. That's why we cannot understand it. But everything in life is for our spiritual good.
Corey, first of all, thank you, everybody, for your comments, for your questions.
Thank you so much.
And
Yeah.
Corey, thank you. I am very excited to turn this back to Brad, who's going to make a brief introduction to Ben Wasserman. We're gonna shake things up a little bit. So,
All
so
right.
happy.
All right. Thank you so much. Two wise individuals. Thank you so much, Corey. And there's going to be more Corey and more Jeannie throughout the day. So, how about this? Since we're about to shift spaces, if you're able, or whatever feels comfortable for you, if you want to stand up, that sounds good. If you want to stay seated, let's just do some kind of reaching up to the sky, wherever you're at. Just reach up. elongate ourselves. I'll turn around too and let's do this facing this view. Not that you're not attractive. All right. So, you know, I'm going to say a couple things in introducing Ben, who's going to join us here. One, that the emotions that we're all talking about around death, I like to think of it like a Jackson Pollock painting. It runs the entire gamut. And so we talk about love, we talk about fear, we talk about pain, spiritual growth. There's also comedy, there's laughter, there's humor, there's it's all there. And so that's one thing I want to just bring to our awareness before we introduce Ben. The other thing is, we've also been talking about how we approach these subject matters. In our approach, obviously, and our feelings, there's a lot in our mind. You know, we talk about meditation and where we put our attention. How do we integrate these hard things that happen to us in life? There's so many different ways to approach any of them. And so, right, in meditation, it's about choosing where that attention goes. And I think, you know, the arts is one way that we can enter this realm. And comedy in particular is very interesting in terms of where we put our attention. And as we think about the role of humor, what I love in these Reimagine experiences is when we have comedy as part of the experience, it always reminds me of where my attention goes. Because from a comedian's perspective, the way that a comedian has to look at life to be funny, they're constantly looking at life from a certain viewpoint and finding the humor in it and finding the joy. And so it's just a reminder of where we put our attention as we think about the hard parts of life. And that's why I think, yeah, the comedy is just such a gift, and why we like to include it in sessions, in festivals, in experiences to remind us of that. And with that as the backdrop, I'm very excited to introduce a man that performs at graveyards and cemeteries and brings comedy to those places, and today to this beautiful cavern of goodness. Ben Wasserman.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody. Wow, are you all in such a mood to laugh? Unfold your hands, please. Thank you. Oh, yep, okay, good. Phone away. 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 Attention on me now. Phone away. No. Who are we texting? Also, if I do this, can you hear me? Like, it's much better? Because I'm quieter or because I'm louder? Okay, clearer. Okay, cool, good, perfect. Is if I do this. Unfortunately. So I'm going to say everything twice. I'm going to say it once in the mic, and then I'm going to say it once like this. We're going to turn it down. Yeah, because I'm loud. I can be loud. You don't look like you like me, but that's going to change, I think. You're trying to figure out what's happening, right? Yeah. Okay, so like in the okay, so yeah, I do a show. I'm going to sit. You're all sitting, so I'm going to sit for a sec. So yeah, I do a show. It's an hour-long comedy show, solo show. It's called Live After Death. So the basic story is I lost 7 people within the span of 3 years. Now I'm doing this incredibly funny, brilliant show called Live After Death. I do it at funeral homes, cemeteries, casket factories, all sorts of stuff. You're already laughing. I love that. That's not at all the funny part. That's just background, but that's really cool. And when I was talking with Brad and Jeannie about like what would I do here? Could I do snippets of the show? I was thinking, yeah, maybe I'll do some snippets of the show so you could see, like, what is it like to sort of have a show about loss and grief or whatever. But then I remembered I got one more performance in New York this month, and it's not sold out yet. So I'm not giving it to you for free. And you can buy tickets, and I'll send you the link later. But I noticed that on the program it said, so I used to do academic stuff. I used to give conference presentations, sort of just like this. And I noticed on the program it said joy, sorrow, and art with comedian Ben Wasserman. And I thought instead of doing necessarily like a whole funny set or anything, and it stinks that there's no projector, and that's fine because I do have my computer. I made a PowerPoint, sort of just going to do a hopefully funny panel slideshow kind of thing with you about joy, sorrow, art. Let me just get in here, and if you're at home, sorry, zoom in. But okay, so joy, sorrow, and art, or how I turned losing my dad, my grandfather, my uncle, and 4 friends, all within the short span of 3 years, into a comedy show. And here's the link. Oh, no. Hold on a second. Oh, no. Okay, so Google Drive lost the slideshow. Okay, first my dad, then my grandfather, my uncle, and my 4 friends, and now my freaking slideshow. Okay, yeah, I thought it was funny. Thank you for laughing. But wow, that sucks. Okay, so I guess I'll just do some of the show. Fuck. All right, so part of the show, and I want to be careful of all these crystals. The show is sort of like, I'll tell you, I really wish I had that slideshow. This is, we've been talking a lot about loss and grief, mostly about people, stuff like that. One thing I didn't realize until today, you can grieve a slideshow. Okay. No, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, well, here. So, in the show, the show's made up of a bunch of what we call bits, funny little gags and stuff, and I do all sorts of high concept stuff. There's a juggling bit, there's a seance, there's all sorts of stuff. And then interspersed between all of those is what are called vulnerable moments. And vulnerable moments in the show come from this wheel. And we spin this wheel in between all the little goofs and gags of the show, and then we sort of just have conversation about people's experiences with these specific topics. So another thing I could tell you about the show is that there's bingo, and you can pass these around. Some of them are already filled out, and you'll see what I mean by that. On the cards themselves, there's a place for people to be able to enter, to write down a loved one who they've lost, their name. Because my show, it's sort of about the people I've lost. It's mostly about the experiences of loss within a given room. So I ask that people think about their loved ones, not necessarily mine. And I thought, I guess, if I can't do the actual presentation, I'm glad I have some of the stuff. There's a whole, I'll give you I'll give you one of the main bits. And I do have to mention the show. I do have a sponsor, which is cool, and I have to do this anytime I talk about the show, and I'm really sorry in advance about this. I'd prefer not to, but it's the only way I could get a little bit of money for the show, so here it goes. And again, I'm sorry. Hey, you fucking sad? You crying? What's the matter? You got tears puddling down your freaking face. Don't worry about it. Tony's Italian tissues. Tony's tissues. Hot, oven fresh, and not soft. Tony's tissues. We're Italian. And if there are any Italians here, I'm sorry if that offended you. That I am contractually obligated to do that, but if you do cry at any point, because we are going to have like a brief sample of it, don't worry about it. I got it. See, you're laughing. It's pretty fucking funny. Yeah, I wish they were laughing. Unfold, unclasp. Your hands are so tightly like this. Yes. No. Just have them slapping your knee. If everyone every 2 minutes could just slap your knee, that would make me feel a whole lot better about doing comedy in an abandoned factory. Okay, so yeah, Tony's Tissues, it's a really cool sponsorship, and I'm really thankful because people do laugh at the show, but then they also, there's been a lot of crying, a lot of growth, a lot of processing, and yeah, so, I mean, actually, I guess would you guys be willing to help me out with the thing? Okay, so this is, are you cool with helping, maybe? Okay, so my show itself has been going pretty well. People are coming out, people are, enjoying themselves. It's good. I'm gonna go on tour soon in December. I'm going on the road. It's great, it's fun. However, there are occasionally moments when people are performing, doing comedy. You've all heard of hecklers or whatever, right? People unfold your arms. What is this? It's a good vibe. We all love what's happening right now with the guy yelling at you to change your body language. That's how we want to spend our Thursday morning. So there are hecklers out there. It's rough when I'm talking about loss and grief and dying and stuff. It's especially hard for me to get back on track when people are interrupting sets or whatever like that. And so I thought, in order to, because the last show in New York it's going to be on my dad's birthday, and that's sort of like a big one, because and then going forward, there are a bunch of special whatever. I just wanted to be prepared in case there are and you guys are great. I love you all, but it's sort of like a simulation on what would it be like if I were to start getting heckled at the show. And yeah, you're already laughing. It's a funny idea. So I'm gonna hand these out, and if don't look at them, and just pass them around blind. Just take a couple. Cool. Okay. Well, you took more than a couple. Yeah. Just give them around. And this is gonna. Don't look at them, and don't improvise or ad lib. That's important. It's really important that you not improvise or ad lib. And we're gonna do a quick little sort of simulation of how I can maybe control hecklers during one of the bits of my show. But before we do that, I should explain the wheel a little bit more, so we're all ready, because it's gonna come at you, and then you're gonna be like, what? So, like I said, we spin the wheel. Oh no, it's hard when. Can you still hear up there? Okay. So we're gonna spin the wheel. Oh no, the wheel is. I got it. Yeah, can you hold the mic for me? Is your name Michael? It is. Mike with the mic. I love that, man. Hell yeah. Okay, so that's how the wheel spins. We'll see where it lands. Every time you'll know when there's one of these vulnerable moments coming, because it will sound like this. Hold on. Michael, you're doing great. Have you ever done this before? You have? Where have you held a microphone like this for someone?
A lot of different talks and music shows.
Okay, music shows, like who?
Friends bands.
Friends band. Anyway, I ever heard? You know Bono?
No, I don't know Bono.
Fuck. I'm trying to get some money from Bono. Okay, here we go. So this is what it'll sound.
You're in the mood with your DJ name here, bringing you a hot, vulnerable moment.
Okay, so during the show, that's how you know that a vulnerable moment's coming up, and it's unconventional, but it's funny, and it's good, and they come out of nowhere, so you won't know, except because I'm running all my tech for myself today. You'll know because I'm going to take my phone out, and I'm going to be like, oh no, wait, hold on one second. But okay, so there's that. That's good. You're going to need to still be there. So here we go. How it's going to work, I'm going to say number 1, number 2, or whatever, and you're going to shout out what's on the cards. So if you have a numbered card, are we? Yes, stick. I move around a lot, Michael. I don't know if you got your steps in today, but I'm gonna get them for you. So you all got the instructions? Wow, a resounding silence. Yes? Okay, this requires you to thank you for trading that. This does require you to be kind of loud. And so if you could give me a little bit more energy. Do you all understand the instructions? Yeah. Okay, good. Wow, here we go. Okay, so my dad. So I lost my dad in 2017 to lung cancer. And when I lost my dad, heckler number one. So sorry for your loss. Okay, thank you. Actually, are there two number ones? So sorry. Yeah, okay, well, maybe say it when I say number one. I'm trying to simulate what losing control of the crowd looks like, and I've lost control way too early. I need both of you at the same time to, okay, cool. From the top. So I lost my father January 20th of 2017. Heckler's number one. So sorry for your loss. Thanks so much. Please shut up. I'm in the middle of doing a bit though, thanks. But yeah, okay, so I lost my dad in January of 2017. And then I started taking care of my grandparents, and for the next year, in order to just sort of make my mom's life a little easier, I was taking care of my grandparents, and then almost a year to the day of my dad dying, I lost my grandfather. So if you need someone to take care of your grandparents, not me, please. Heckler number two. Yeah, now it's just me suffering. Thanks. It's just me suffering here in a cavern with all you people heckling me. Please don't heckle me. I'm trying to do the juggling bit. But yeah, so I lost my dad, and then I lost my grandfather, and in between those, my friend Nick killed himself, and then heckler number three. Hopefully they're in a better place. Yeah, hopefully they're in a better place. Hopefully they're not here where people who are reasonably nice are heckling them. Please, what's your name? Demetra, I don't come to where you work and heckle you. Where do you work? Okay, so actually I do, but otherwise I wouldn't. So just please be respectful. It's really hard doing comedy about these things that hurt, and every time that you all are yelling at me, it's making it a lot harder for me to do it. But anyway, so I lost my dad, my grandfather, then my friend Nick killed himself. Shortly after that, my friend Raghav died unexpectedly. Heckler number four. You're so hot. Okay, same, thanks. But I am in the middle of trying to do this thing right now. Okay, but I love your shirt, and we can flirt later. But also, please be respectful. I'm sharing some vulnerable stuff. Speaking of... And normally I got a guy, and he's just doing all the tech, you know?
You're in the mood with your DJ name here, bringing you a hot, vulnerable moment.
Oh no, it's another Tony's. Sorry. And this was random, you know it was, but I do have to do it. Hey, what's the matter with you? Why are you crying? What, you got mozzarella all on the floor or something like that? You're so upset you got mozzarella? What's going on? Yeah, take the picture. You're going to take a picture. Why don't you take a picture of this? Tony's Italian tissues. Hot, oven fresh, and not soft. I make them in the back of a pizza shop. Tony's tissues. Okay, so we'll just spin it again, obviously, because that was just the ad, but... Where are you? Where'd you go?
Hey, I'm just giving you space.
No, thank you, but... No! Last Will and Testament, that's a good one. Anyone here ever get something from a loved one who died that they still have to this day and treasure and hold on to? Yeah, Rose. A horse? You got a horse. From whom? Your best friend. What was your best friend's name? Okay, so we'll just spin it again, obviously, because that was just the ad, but... Where are you? Where'd you go?
Hey, I'm just giving you space.
No, thank you, but... No! Last Will and Testament, that's a good one. Anyone here ever get something from a loved one who died that they still have to this day and treasure and hold on to? Yeah, Rose. A horse? You got a horse. From whom? Your best friend. What was your best friend's name? Susanna. Oh! Insane catch. Insane catch. Oh my God. I'll tell you, that could have been a show in and of itself. That wild. I'm sorry, Rose. Rose. What's the horse's name? George. And George is still alive. And do you ride George? George is retired. Do you pet George? You FaceTime with a horse and his keeper. Who's his? So your friend
Left me her horse. He's mine, George.
But your horse is
Well, he lives
away.
on a ranch in Missouri,
But you live
in New Jersey.
in New Jersey.
Right.
So this is all making a lot of sense to me,
Yeah.
I think. And how often do you FaceTime the horse?
Once a month.
And what are the conversations?
He's very empathetic. He's very handsome. He's a red sorrel, and he's running around in the field. And we have to, the caretaker brings some of his favorite grains, so he'll come to the camera. And then, he whinnies at me sometimes.
That's cute.
That's all you can ask for, right?
When you FaceTime with George, do you think of your friend?
Yes.
And what do you think about?
She was the smartest person I ever met, and I loved her dearly.
Yeah.
She was kind
Yeah.
and smart.
I'm glad you have George to carry on her memory.
Thank you.
And those feelings.
I love George too.
Yeah, I'm sure George loves you back. Cool. Anyone else? Anyone know already? Do you know if you died today, who's getting your blazer? Like, is there who is there? You seem relatively young, but have you thought about like stuff that you wanna? Yeah. Yeah, or anything, whatever. I mean, if you've thought about who's getting the blazer, fine.
My sister will get my blazer.
Sister will get your blazer.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it will fit her and it will look good on her.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Have you thought about actually ever thought about other things that you own that you'd?
Yeah, anytime I buy something new, I think about who it would go to after I died because I'm
Anytime?
Yeah, it's just
Okay, we need to work on that. I think. You're allowed to buy
It's a framework
things.
for combating consumerism.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's a good way to be mindful and
Yeah.
and sustainable is to be like, well, I know this will be going to someone else because I'm
Yeah.
going to die one day. Okay, cool. Anyone else either get something or know something that they want to give away? Okay, cool. We'll move on. That's how the vulnerable moments work. Michael, I need you. I'm gonna try and get back to the juggling bit. Hey! I see it. And juggling's already very hard when you're juggling all these losses, but now juggling these fucking hecklers too. Where was I? Okay, so I lost my dad, then I lost my grandfather. My friend Nick and Raghav died, and then within a year of my grandfather dying, my mom's brother, my uncle passed away, heckler number 5. Benghazi? Yeah, I'm not going to be talking about Benghazi. I mean, if you're still on that, I don't know, but I'm not going to be talking about Benghazi. I'm just trying to talk about the people I loved and lost, and it's really difficult to do that when people keep heckling you. Heckler number 6? Whoa, heckler number 7? Okay. I started off by saying, please don't improvise. I didn't write asshole on that. No, don't show them. Anyway, so, gosh, where was I? Okay. Does someone have 8? What? Okay, now this is a real heckle. The where was I was a joke. Anyway, okay, fine. And then, yeah, so uncle, and then I'll just get to it. And then my friend Steve suddenly died, and then a little bit after that, my friend Ryan also killed himself. So suicide, illnesses, sudden deaths, all this sorts of stuff. Really hard. I am getting the sort of like start wrapping it up thing. So I might not actually be able to get into the full juggling like bit for you, but I should just note when I do the juggling bit, each of these balls are proportional to the amount of each of the people I lost meant to me. I think that's important to note that when you lose people, you can absolutely rank them, like completely. And yeah, okay. So I'm gonna start actually. Yeah, you want to say, give it up for Michael for helping me out. And I'm gonna. You know, I really wanted to. I wanted to end on something funny and good and stuff like that, but I don't. Losing that PowerPoint at the start really kind of messed with me, and I thought it would only be appropriate to end with a few words about that PowerPoint. My PowerPoint about joy and sorrow and art that I lost was one of the best PowerPoints I ever made. It had so many good points in it, so many incredible ideas. Slide 1. I wish you could meet him. That guy came in swinging, and he gave you a lot of background information about me. But that only got you ready for slide 2. Probably my favorite slide. Okay, yeah, you get the bit. I didn't actually have a PowerPoint. The whole bit is that I lose the PowerPoint, and then I do a little funeral service for the PowerPoint. You get it. You guys have been a lot of fun, and humoring me and playing around with me. If you're in New York and you want to come see the show at the end of the month, it's Halloween weekend. I will give you free tickets. I don't care anymore. It's the last one. I want it to be super fun, but it's already half sold out, so you'd have to figure it out soon. But y'all are great. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I'll see you later. I'll be around. Bye.
Ben Wasserman, thank you so much for reminding us that when we are laughing, cracking up after a funeral or around a bedside, it's part of life, right? This is part of life. Laughing is one of the best things we can do for ourselves, and it's one of the most healing things I know. So thank you, Ben, for bringing that right up close for us today.